Welcome to the Westward Podcast, where I'll be talking all things cowboying, horses, grace, grit, faith, and everything that makes the Western lifestyle so rich and timeless. I'm your host, Devin Conley. You might know me from my social media channels, Devin Out West, and in this space, I'll share stories from the saddle, lessons learned under the big sky, a little bit of my humor, some poetry, and plenty of heart. Whether it's my musings or a guest with a story to tell, you'll hear the voices of folks who live the West, not just in the land, but in the spirit. This show is for anyone who feels the pull of the open range, whether it's horses and cattle, history, Western fashion, or just that yearning for wide open spaces and the peace that comes with them. So take a deep seat in the saddle and join me as we talk about life out west. God is good, and I'm so glad you're here with me on this journey. Let's head westward. The Westward Podcast is co-produced with LiveEQ, the leading mobile app for horse owners. Find everything you need for your horse journey, from barns and stables to trainers, jobs, and horses, all in one free app. So, who am I, and why do I have a podcast? Well, I just kind of felt like it was something that nobody was doing, and it's a brand new thing. I don't know if you've ever even heard of podcasting. I'm just joking at this point. Obviously, it's everybody's doing podcasting, but that's okay. I'm really, really excited to do this. It's honestly something I've wanted to do for a while, and the opportunity presented itself, and here we are. So thanks for being here. Thanks for following along. Thanks for joining me, and I hope you like it. For this first episode, I'm just going to give you a little background about me, because you might follow my social media channels, Devin Out West, and if you do, you might have noticed that there's not a lot of information about me out there, actually. It's just kind of my humor and my poetry and things of that nature. So I just wanted to give you a little info and background on me and tell you a little bit about how I'm involved in the horse industry, how I got involved in the horse industry, and we'll go from there. So this is going to be the first episode of the Westward Podcast. Again, so happy that you're here. So I was very, very blessed to grow up in the horse industry. My dad was a team roper on the circuit, and he was a healer. And if you know anything about healing, you know that it's an art form, and he's definitely an artist. So dad was a team roper. I have a brother. I have a sister. And my earliest childhood memories are dad taking us to the team ropings, arena lights, riding his horse, his roping horse, back to the trailer. And sometimes he'd let us warm her up, which as a kid, to ride around that arena with some of the top ropers, in the country at the time, in dad's saddle, couldn't reach the stirrups, warming up his roping horse. Well, I can call those memories back right now as if it happened yesterday. Just such cool childhood memories. So dad was a team roper. That's where I kind of I cut my teeth on the rodeo industry, was going along with him, with my siblings, and him taking us down the road so he could continue roping. And it was the four of us cruising down the road in like a 1978, 1980 Jamboree motorhome and like a rusted out Charmac bumper pole horse trailer. And that was it. That was the crew. Just a motley crew cruising down the road in an RV that you could not get over like 50 miles an hour. And if you were going up a hill, forget it. You were down to like 25. I learned very early on from a young age that people will flip you off if you're pulling a horse trailer and you're going slower than what they would like you to. So that's fun. Going down the road with dad as he was roping was really, really cool. And then we kind of all got to the age 5 or 6 where we became old enough to start rodeoing in the Pee Wee division of the CJRA, the Colorado Junior Rodeo Association. And so dad backed off his own dreams and kind of slowed down on his own roping schedule so that he could start taking us to the junior rodeos. And so we kept going down the road, but now in a little bit of a different capacity. And so we didn't just have dad's roping horse in the back. We had 3 or 4 horses in the back, and he had 3 wild children to wrangle. And again, a motorhome that couldn't get over 50 miles an hour. So if you can imagine kind of a 3-ring circus, that was us. And now I'm at the age where I can look back on that and be like, wow, Dad, thank you so much. You were a superhero. I don't know how you did it, but somehow he did. So Dad not only kind of gave up on his own roping dreams for us, but he actually turned his roping mare into a junior rodeo horse. So she was like the first horse I competed on, the first horse I ever went to the finals on for rodeo. Her name was Lady. She was 14-1, maybe 14-2 if she stood on her toes. Just a plain little sorrel mare, grade. He bought her for $950, and he'll tell you that $50 almost broke the deal. He was like, I did not want to pay that extra $50, and he almost missed out on the horse of a lifetime because of it. But she was one of those horses that you could never replicate. Just priceless and irreplaceable. And she was as solid as a rock, as solid as they come, except she was a lot of horse. She was a handful. And somewhere along the line, I'm not really sure how I did it, I accidentally taught her to rear, and then I could call it up on command. Don't try this at home. I do not recommend this. This was a bad thing that I did, and I would never do this with my horses now, but I would, oh my goodness, I would teach her to rear, and then we would walk into the arena on her back legs, and my poor father was like, what have you done to my good horse, So that was a lot of fun. Probably not for Dad, but Lady is who really, really taught me the ropes of rodeo, of competing, of finding some confidence at that age, and all of those things. So, we junior rodeoed, and then that turned into high school rodeo, and I did some college rodeo, and it all started with watching Dad compete, at the team ropings at the rodeos. And it was an incredible way to grow up, and it was a huge blessing. Again, I'm at the age now where I can look at what my dad did and everything that he carried on his shoulders and put up with. And I'm like, that was impressive. That was very impressive because, we're in this motorhome traveling. He's got 3 young kids, 3 or 4 horses in the back. He's in charge of everybody's life, right? And do you think we were good traveling partners? Absolutely not. No, we were terrible traveling partners. We went into the back of the motorhome and fell asleep. And he sat up front for 8 or 9 hours and just drove that old motorhome. A lot of the time he'd take us out of school early on a Friday and we'd hit the road, and he would just drive like straight through to very desolate, remote fairgrounds where these rodeos were held, where there might be a truck stop if you were lucky. If you were lucky. Otherwise, we kind of subsisted off Lunchables, but that was the name of the game. So yeah, thank you, Dad. Big shout out to you for everything that you did there, which was a lot. And growing up in that kind of environment as a kid, I learned some very valuable lessons that I still carry with me today. So one of them being, it doesn't matter how much money you have, and it doesn't matter if you have the shiniest, newest rig in the lot. It doesn't matter if you're going to pull out a horse that costs you $50,000, $60,000, $70,000. It doesn't matter if you're going to pull a horse out of the back that costs you $500. What matters is your try and your grit and your commitment and your passion, right? And kind of along those same lines, Dad had a rule, and his rule was that we had to iron our rodeo shirts and put them on hangers in the horse trailer or in the motorhome. They could never be packed into a suitcase. And it took me a long time to figure out why. Like, what was the deal with this rule? And it took me a long time to figure out why. Like, what was the deal with this rule? And eventually I asked him about it, and he said, well, it just costs nothing to take pride in your appearance. So at this time, yeah, we had some horses and we had this rig, but we didn't have a lot of money growing up. And so we didn't ride $50,000 horses. We didn't ride $5,000 horses. We rode budget horses, but they were good. Dad always made sure they were good. And we were making do, right? And so his rule of it costs nothing to take pride in your appearance has really stuck with me, because I still iron my shirts to this day. Like, all my button-ups, all my pearl snaps, my jeans, they're going to get ironed, because they might not be the newest things on the rack. Half the time they're probably from the thrift store. Doesn't mean I can't iron them and get the wrinkles out, because that's free, right? So a couple rules that I learned from those times that still stick with me and that really resonate with me. And Lady was a gift. She was a blessing. I released a poetry book recently called Words of the West, and there's a poem in there called The Sorrel Horse, and that's about Lady, because there's a lot of folks out there that they don't want a sorrel, right? They don't want a bay. They don't want kind of a plain Jane horse, and that's totally fine. Like, you're welcome to have your preferences, and you can buy whatever you want to buy. Spend your money however you want to spend it, but I would never turn down a sorrel horse. I love them. I think they shine in the sun like a new penny. I think they're gorgeous. I think they slick off just spectacularly. And that poem is about Lady, because she was that sorrel horse that I think got overlooked and then turned out to be a superstar. He paid $950 for her, and he had offers to buy her from some of the best ropers of the time for thousands and thousands of dollars. So you just never know. Doesn't matter what color they are. My motto's always been, a good horse can't be a bad color, because there is no bad color. So I'll fast forward a little bit, so I'm not, just rambling about my childhood, but along with, the junior rodeo, we lived on a little farm. We raised some hay. We always had some cows, some sheep, some goats, some hogs, breakaway calves, all that stuff. So it was a really great way to grow up, and just kind of running wild. In northern Colorado, where I grew up, just running wild, swimming in the irrigation ditches. Well, swimming is kind of a strong term. Standing in the irrigation ditches, because they only went up to like your knees. So, we used to tie ropes to the barn rafters and jump off the haystack and swing on the rope until Dad found out. And then he was like, you're going to pull this barn down on top of your heads, and I'm going to be furious. So we stopped doing that. But had a great childhood that way, played some sports. And then as I got older, I was a junior in high school when I realized I wanted to be a history teacher. That's just what I wanted to do. And so I wanted to be a history teacher. I wanted to teach American history specifically. And it was all due to a teacher that I had in my junior year of high school, Modern America. She was fantastic. And she just made every kid love history. I've always been a huge history buff. I was kind of the weird kid reading like war biographies in third grade and like military history textbooks. I've always been fascinated with history. It's always been my favorite subject in school. And my junior year, I was like, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a history teacher. So I graduated high school at 17. I went to Colorado State University for my teaching degree and double majored in history, and social studies education. And then again, another huge blessing, I student taught at a school for social studies, 7th grade. And then again, another huge blessing, I student taught at a school. At the end of that year, the teacher in that position moved to another position within the same school, and I was hired for that job. So I walked into my job at that school where I was already familiar, already knew the people. It was incredible. I went from there, stayed at the same school, and then taught 8th grade U.S. history, and then did that for about a decade. I was about 9.5 years in when I decided I wanted to maybe try something a little different. And so I went back to college, got my master's in counseling, and then a counseling job opened up at the same school. And so I became a school counselor at the same school, which is unheard of that I was able to stay there through all those transitions for a decade. So I was a school counselor, and then again, the sky opened up. God worked. He always makes a way, has a way, right? You just have to trust his plan. And he dropped another job in my lap in equine media. And I was blown away. I was like, absolutely. And so at 30 years old, I made this huge, giant career change. So before I go any further, I do want to note that if you're in the horse industry, you have horses, you have livestock, whatever it is, it's okay to have a full-time job outside the industry. Sometimes I think maybe we won't be taken seriously if our job, our 9 to 5 is outside the horse industry. And I'm here to tell you, like, that's not true. I was a teacher for so many years, and I have never gone a day in my life without having horses in my life, without owning horses. But, it's okay to work a job outside the industry. It's okay to go to your 9 to 5 and then come home to your horses and kind of live dual lives. It's okay to have a town job, so to speak, to afford your livestock. There's a lot of people that do that, and you are no less of a hand. You're no less of an equestrian, a horseman, whatever it might be, because you have a job outside the industry. And if you have a job within the industry and horses is all you do, day in and day out, that's awesome too. That's fantastic. And for some people, that's the dream. For some people, they want to keep horses as their side, their passion, their hobby, their lifestyle, whatever, and then have the other job in town or the job outside the industry. That's fine too. It's all fine. We're just trying to all make money to support our expensive habit of horses. So if you work a town job outside the industry, that's okay. It doesn't make you any less involved in the industry. So I just want to make sure I note that. Now, I did end up in this job in equine media, and all of a sudden I was immersed. I was working in the industry. I was working in the horse industry, and it's been amazing. It's been incredible and another blessing and another gift, and I'm very, very grateful for that. So I've done it both. I've worked outside the horse industry. I've worked fully immersed in the horse industry, and either way, I always had horses and we're all just working to afford our horses. So working in equine media, it's been fantastic. I love it. I've learned so many things, met so many cool people. Very, very grateful for the opportunities there. As far as like the social media stuff, I'm kind of an introvert. So social media was never in my plans to grow on social media. Of course, then I learned so much about it and how to manage it and how to run it, properly. But it has been self-taught. I did not go to school for that. It has been trial and error, and I've grown to love it. I really have. And I have a great passion for the reach that social media can bring you and the way it can help you tell your narrative and your story and connect with people and grow and build a community. And that's been the things that I've done that I've just absolutely loved. So across all my social media platforms, I think I have between 700,000 to 800,000 people that are there with me on that journey. And how cool is that? What a gift. Because, I write about this in my poetry book, Words of the West, but who am I, right? Like, I'm kind of a nobody. I'm just a gal who lives in Wyoming who has a pickup with over 200,000 miles on it and a horse trailer with a lot of rust and a few horses that I think are really nice. But I'm rich beyond measure in the things that you can't put a price tag on, like my fiance is the most wonderful man I've ever met in my life. And I have a fantastic family, and I have friends that help me day in and day out and help me grow and help me learn. And I am rich in the things that money can't buy. So very blessed there. But at the same time, sometimes I look at these platforms and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. This is what a gift, what an opportunity. And I am so grateful for everybody that's been there for that journey. But again, I never really meant to grow those platforms. So I actually started my TikTok journey during the shutdown, and we were teaching remotely. So the schools were all closed, and I would get some emails from my students, and they'd be like, oh, I miss seeing you. I miss your humor, whatever, which they always rolled their eyes at my jokes, but that's okay. I knew they secretly loved them. And so I started making some videos so I could just kind of like make jokes, and my students could watch these videos and be like, oh, that's so funny. That's my teacher. And they'd laugh. And then I made a couple horse videos that just took off. I realized, okay, so all these like weird, funny conversations I have in my head about horses are relatable to people. Interesting. And I just kept making the videos, and all of a sudden the community started to grow, and people were like, this is exactly how I feel. This is exactly what my horse does. Let me tell you my story about my little stinkers out there that throw their hay all over the ground or whatever. And it's just grown into this blossoming, wonderful community of people who are so kind and so uplifting, and I'm just grateful for every single one of them. And it's grown from like where I've shared my horse humor to I try to share some like tips and tricks. I am no horse trainer, okay, but I've been in the industry my whole life, and so I try to share some things that maybe I've learned the hard way on, the relatable content. And then I started sharing my Western poetry. Now, I've written my entire life. I've always loved to write. I've always loved to write poetry, short stories, everything like that. Always. I remember I shared one of my poems, didn't think anything of it. I just thought, well, this is kind of a neat place to put things out there. And it went like viral. And I was so honored. I was so honored that people liked those words that I just sat down and scribbled on a napkin. And all of my poetry, every single one of my poems is based on my personal experiences. They're based on horses I've owned in the past. They're based on people in my life or people I've come across or stories that people have told me. And so they're very, very personal. And at first I was like, I can't put these out into the world. Like they're precious to me. These words are precious to me. And now it's like, no, I love sharing this because I love the feedback I get of people that are like, thank you for putting this into words, which is so awesome. So my poetry book, Words of the West, has been a labor of love. It is self-designed, self-published. What a learning curve that was. I got it done and put it out there. And again, I was so overwhelmed and humbled and grateful for the outpouring of support that came with that. I think I've sold about 800 copies so far, and that's just so cool. That just makes me so happy. I sign every book. I print every label, packed all of them myself or like with the help of my fiance or my dad, and still working on getting orders out as they come in, and I'm just gonna keep the order open for the books. And I'm just so appreciative that so many people found value in my words or found relevancy in my words or found themselves. That's kind of always been my intention, is to just be as genuine and authentic as possible and know that I think people will see themselves in that. And I'm just so excited I get to share this journey with you guys now through this format too. So this is kind of a temporary workspace. I'm going to update my recording area a little bit, but I will post the recordings on YouTube, and then you'll be able to stream this podcast wherever you find your podcasts. I'll put info in the show notes about where you can find more information. And as we go forward, I'm going to interview some folks and talk to some people, like I said, some folks that you probably know, some names that you're probably pretty familiar with, and then some that maybe you're not, but by the end of their story, I think you'll be hooked. I think you'll be fascinated with them. And then I'll share some of my poetry. I'll share some of my own musings. There's going to be times where it's just me chatting with you, my friend, on the other side of the screen, on the other side of these headphones, on the other side of the phone, the computer, wherever you're listening, whatever you're listening on. And I just hope that you come along for the ride. And if you're wondering about the name, the Westward Podcast, that word just resonated with me when I released my poetry book. And it's what I've written in most of them. And the inside cover, when I sign it, I just write Westward, because to me it's like a goal. Let's move westward. And not physically. Like, that doesn't mean you have to pack up and move westward physically, but we're talking about the West. We're living the spirit of the West. I'm trying to bring that to folks who maybe they want a taste of that, but they've never had the opportunity, or maybe they're in the high rise and they're overlooking the city lights and dreaming about open fields, whatever it might be. I'm just trying to bring you westward with me a little bit. And I hope that I'm able to, and I hope that you enjoy this show. And going forward, if you have suggestions or you have people that you really want me to chat with, I'm definitely going to be open to all those suggestions. And if you have feedback, please let me know. Otherwise, this is just kind of a little get to know me session. And I'm just really happy that you're here. So thank you for being here. Thanks for coming along for the ride. Until next time, check on your friends, check your cinch, and thanks for heading westward with me. God is good, and I'm so glad that you're here.